Hello, everyone. Welcome back to E20 Zone TV. I am joined by YouTube royalty stateside, and I must admit, I'm thoroughly pleased to have him on my channel. Absolute gentleman. This is Lee from American Hammers Network. Lee, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay, James. How are you?
All good, mate. All good. I'm enjoying the sort of no football every other day, but we will get bored eventually. We will want it back. But this is your player ratings, and this is your season review. And we're going to start off with this man, Lucas Fabianski. Give me your assessment on him, Lee.
Well, I just want to explain very briefly before we start. Play ratings to me, I kind of weight them by the player. In other words, like if this is a regular starter, I'm going to be a little more harsh than if it's somebody who doesn't make a lot of appearances. So like if we get to Yarmolenko, for instance, I'll probably give him a higher rating than most people would, just because he didn't play much. Anyway, Fab, obviously our first choice keeper. I have to tell you, I thought he struggled. I really did, and I think Areola has to be our number one next season. I don't think he will be because that's not how Moyes works. But I give Fab, for going 1 to 10, I give him like a 6. I do. He saved some penalties. He had a great penalty save against Manchester City there toward the in the next to last game of the season, and I just feel as though physically he's not as capable as he was a couple of seasons ago. His distribution is a little questionable. I think it's time to move on from him as our first choice keeper, and I don't think he has that much longer left in the Premier League, to be honest. And it may be a little harsh, but I feel as though he's dropped off a lot.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I really do. I can't not disagree with that rating. I think I'll give him a 7. I think, and that's me being like borderline 7. But yeah, listen, I think Areola should be the number one goalkeeper. I totally agree with you there. Really, really do.
Of course, we have to sign him. We have to sign him.
Yeah.
First,
And let's get to the man. This man, Alfonso Areola, first season at West Ham on loan. Cup competitions, one league game he played in. That was Manchester United away. Give me your assessment on him, mate.
I give him an 8. I give him an 8 based on what we saw from him. Right? I mean, again, we didn't see as much from him as we did Fabianski, but the save against Sevilla alone saved our European campaign at least for 2 more rounds, and that was gigantic. I can't think of many instances when a goal was just really his fault. I mean, he might have done better I don't know. When Cresswell got sent off against Frankfurt, it's hard to say if he was in the right place at the right time, but you really can't blame Areola for that. Now, I thought he did well. I think, he's going to get better the longer he stays with us, and he's my choice for number 1. So, yeah, I give him an 8, which I think is pretty good.
Yeah, I think he's been absolutely first class for us, really. I think he's definitely a man who we have to sign. 100%.
Absolutely. You know I mean? No question about it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all this talk about Nick Pope and other keepers, I mean, we know Areola can play for us. That's the thing that's important to me. Is I know that Pope is a great Premier League keeper. I wouldn't say no to him. But Areola just played a whole season with us, and he was really very good. So I see no reason.
I just don't understand why West Ham would want to change it.
He played, I mean, he kept us in Europe. He gave us 2 more rounds in Europe, basically. So.
Yeah. 100% agree, mate. Moving on to this man. Ryan Fredericks has left the club now on a free transfer. Give me your assessment on his time at West Ham, Lee.
I mean, he's a squad player. Colin was always a squad player to me. He's not a bad player. Wally, who of course comes on American Hammers TV a lot, likes to point out that we did not lose a match that Ryan Fredericks started this season, but I think that's like maybe 2 or 3, so it's not very many. I mean, if I had to put a score on him, I'd give him like a 7, and that's not a 7 compared to say Soufal or Johnson, but it's for a backup player, for a squad player. I thought he was fine. He was fine.
Yeah.
But if he were in the starting 11 consistently, I'm sure he'd have a much lower score. But it's hard for me to be too harsh on the guy. I mean, clearly he's not at a high level Premier League standard. He's somebody to me who I think is a Fulham level player, a championship Premier League sort of,
mid-table,
bottom of the table player. But he didn't cause any trouble. He was good friends with Declan Rice, and he was serviceable. And I don't remember him doing anything egregiously bad. So it's fine for what he was. but we don't need to keep him.
Who's his replacement next year? Is it Ashby for you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of Ashby. I mean, from what I've seen,
Yeah.
now, I'm not going to say that I would watch a lot of the under 23s, but I've watched some, and I certainly watched Ashby in Europe, and I thought Ashby was brilliant. I thought he was the best of our prospects. So yeah, I would love to see him. I would love to see him come in. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I really do. Moving on to the other side, Arthur Mazuaku. This man has been here a long time, and
All right,
he scored that goal, though, Lee. He scored that goal against Chelsea.
He gets a 3. All right, he gets a 3, and I'll tell you, he only gets a 3 because of the 3 points we picked up against Chelsea. That's his 3. He'd get a 0 if it weren't for Chelsea. I don't like Masuaku. He can't defend. He's not good enough on the wing to be a winger. He doesn't fit in anywhere. I'm just not a fan. However, that the Chelsea goal was obviously an accident. He didn't know it was going to happen. Still, it went in. You know, I tell my kids when I coach the kids, put the ball on net, put it on net, and that's what he did. I think he was trying to cross, but I hate Chelsea. You know that. I give him credit for the match winner against Chelsea. That's his 3. That's it. That's all he gets.
That's it. Arthur gets a 3, and we move on. Moving on to this man, Issa Diop. He's had a mixed season, Issa, hasn't he?
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, this is a tough one. I was thinking about this last night. I mean, I guess I think of him a little bit the way I think of Fab. I give him like a 6, and a lot of people would probably give him lower than that. But he was able to come in a couple of times when we had injuries and perform competently, I thought. He's just been such a disappointment to me.
He had a good game in Lyon. Like
he did have a good game in Lyon. Absolutely, he did. Yeah, that was a big situation where he had a good game. He had a couple of decent Premiership appearances where, you know, he came in. We had Zuma, we had Dawson suspended, and Zuma was injured, and he got forced into action, and he was okay. It's just that if you go back 2 years, he was such a promising prospect.
Yeah.
And I've said this before, but I remember the rumor that Manchester United wanted to buy him for £60 million. And I went on American Hammer TV. I said, don't sell him because I think he's going to be. And then he just didn't. It didn't happen. You know?
Just hasn't progressed, is he? That's the only problem.
Progressed. I'd take £6 million for him now, probably, but certainly, you know, we're not going to get 60 million. So, but he was not. But he wasn't a disaster. He wasn't a disaster.
Nah, I agree. Moving on to this man, Craig Dawson.
My man gets a 9 out of 10. He gets a 9 out of 10. And I'll tell you one reason why. He's Craig Dawson. All right. You know, if you put a £50 million world-class center back there and have him perform the way Dawson did, I probably don't give him a 9. I probably give him like a 7.5 or an 8, you know. But because he's a £2 million player from Watford, a guy who was never supposed to be, you know, what he is now, I give him 9. I think he was one of the absolute. I think he was at the foundation of our team, and I know he had an own goal late in the season. He had some bad, that was Sufal. Now that I think about it, anyway, he had some rough times, but for who he is, guy's performing way above his standard, way above.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I think he's absolutely first class, and I think it's about right the rating, really, for how much he's cost and everything else.
That's what I mean. Agree. Yeah, value for money, the guy's a 10 out of 10. He's a 12 out of 10. But in terms of, you know, I give him a 9 for the season. I thought he was great.
Moving on to Ben Johnson. Another one. Started off well, October, September time. He was excellent. Then he's fallen off a bit of an edge of a cliff a little bit. What's going on with Ben Johnson this season, mate?
I give Ben Johnson a 7, and that may be a little harsh, but I don't know. He's been around a long time now, and longer than people remember. You know, his debut was against Manchester City. I want to say Pellegrini was still here.
Yeah. That 3 years ago, 3-4 years ago.
It was like 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. And he did really well in that match, but he's been inconsistent. I'm not confident. I want him to be the right back of our future. I'm not confident that he is because he's really got to improve going forward. He just has to get a lot better. You know, we you know how we work. I mean, you know, we play on the counter. We rely a lot on crosses and passes in the channel. And he's not good enough at that stuff yet. He's not good enough going forward yet. So certainly he's young and we should stick with him and we will stick with him. And I don't think he's anywhere near the top of our list of players to replace. but could have been an 8 or 9 halfway through the season, and he dropped off a lot. So
Yeah, I agree, mate. The only thing with Ben that sort of irritates me is he's a good defensively. Just going forward, he just seems to check back. He's just got no confidence in getting to the byline and trying to beat a man. Or do you know what I mean? So it's frustrating.
He's got to improve that. He's more of an old school right back, and we just but the one thing I'll say for him though is he can step in at left back when he needs to, and that's a big deal because we'd have been screwed a couple of times without him. So, maybe a 7.5 with his play at left back, but I'd say a 7 overall because he just, as you said, we really need that attacking function at right back, and he just doesn't provide it. It hurts us,
I agree. To the other right back, Vladimir Kafal, another mixed season for this geezer. Last year, I was on your channel. I was saying he should be player of the year. This year, he's nowhere near it, mate. He's been terrible, I think.
I bought his shirt last year. My shirt from last season is a Tufal shirt, not this one, but the with the claret with the blue sleeves. I mean, I kind of give him like a 6.5 because I think he was a little bit worse than Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
If you're going to compare those two like for like, similar, but not a good defender. Had an atrocious own goal against Manchester City in a game that we could have won. I mean, you hate to say it, but you get down to those last couple of games of the season, and we kind of bottled 6th place. We had a chance to win them both, and he was kind of a big part of us not winning one of them. And I know you shouldn't look at 1 or 2 games to judge a whole season, but you also have to look at how players play in the clutch. You know what I mean? When you need points, and I didn't think he was great in that situation. So I actually give him like a 6.5, which is a shame because last year to me he was like a 9.5. He was tremendous.
He was. It's unbelievable, really, the way he has gone. The only thing I will say is he did get injured halfway through the season.
That's true.
I think it was.
To be fair, he did, and he came back from that. But it's hard to come back from an injury like that. He came back looking better than I thought he would. He came back sooner than I thought he would. I still like him. I love his attitude. I think he loves the club. I'm a little worried about Tufal and Souček both that the rest of the league has figured them out a little bit.
Do you think next season will give you your full assessment of him? Like, he's had a good first season, second season not so good, third season is really where he's at.
I think we're going to find out whether or not he's just a Diop, right? Because Diop had a great first season. He's struggled ever since. So I think we're going to get a Diop season, or a season where we decide whether or not he's Diop or whether he's going to be somebody who's our right back for the next 3-4 seasons. I certainly hope he succeeds. I love him. I love his attitude. I love that he takes the bus. Apparently, there's so much about him to like. But he's got to improve defensively. I mean, and he's got to be a little more. He's got to be tighter in the big games. To me, I thought he was a little lacking in the big games. Yeah,
I totally agree with you, Lee. Moving on to this man. Now, this is going to be an interesting one. Cresswell started off well, got injured halfway through the season, got a back injury at the City away, comes back, and then towards the back end of the season gets sent off twice. What's your assessment on him, mate?
Well, I think you can't give him any higher than about a 5, and that seems really low. But getting sent off against Frankfurt, even though I know it wasn't entirely his fault, all right? I know Zuma and Dawson were out of position, and I understand that. But he made a bad decision at a critical time. And he just made a bad decision. He started off well. The injury, I think, hurt him a lot. I love Cresswell for all the service he's done for the club. But I think we need to move on from him. We said 2 years ago we needed to move on from him. Then he came back under Moyes, and he had a little revival, and he started playing pretty well. But I saw toward the end of the season, those bad decisions again, that dip in form. We just need a better left back. And I don't want to. He's not the reason we lost to Frankfurt. Okay, we lost to Frankfurt because we gave away a goal in the first minute of the home leg. But he did cost us the second game. He did cost us that second 90 minutes. He did, and you can't can't not say that. Yeah.
Do you think we will sign a left back, Lee, before we move on?
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just we need one. We've only got one at the club because the other one's no good. But
exactly. We have 1.5. We have Cresswell and we have Johnson, but Johnson's not really left back. So
yeah, I agree. Quickly before I move on, I think I do agree with you on the Cresswell rating there. I think I'll give him a low rating and all. I think I'll give him a 4. I just think with Cress, he's very safe, passing sideways back, very good like. Against the top teams, I just think sometimes he goes missing. And someone just put in my chat, one word for Cresswell is slow. And that's what he is. He's very slow. And
very slow.
You know, I think in a free, he's not too bad. I think he can do a job in a free.
Yeah.
But
he did.
As your left
better, back. You know, the only time Masuaku was ever useful was when he and Cress kind of shared that left back responsibility. But then again, I think the rest of the league kind of figured that out. And it wasn't as effective after we've done that a few times. Yeah. So, again, great servant to the club and et cetera, and a guy I like for his, personality and all that. But we got to do better.
I agree, mate. Moving on to this man. He's just come from court. He's got 180 hours community service, which is good. He ain't in jail for like 18 years. Give me your assessment on Kurt Zouma on his first season at West Ham.
I give him a 9 out of 10. I thought he was great.
Yeah, I agree.
He was great. I mean, mistakes here and there. Could have been better positioned for the second Frankfurt goal in the home leg. But I mean, I thought given the number of goals he probably prevented, you can allow him a couple of errors. I thought the guy was absolutely fantastic, and I do not approve of cat kicking. All right, so that's not Hopefully he's repentant. He won't do it again. He'll do his time. We can all forget about it, and we can move on. Because I think the guy's a fantastic player. I think he's an absolute rock, and he is probably one of the 3 best players we have. And I give him a 9 out of 10, and maybe even a 9.5. I thought it was fantastic.
Do you feel though, Lee, that he got better after that? Like for me, I thought he was excellent. He's got the whole world against him, and he's still putting in 8, 9 out of 10 performances.
I thought he got better. I think I think it sort of. I don't know, motivated him to kind of prove that. Well, let's put it this way. I think football became a welcome distraction for him in a way. And he played more freely, and he played with, with more sort of creativity and just, I know center backs aren't particularly creative, but I thought it was a way for him to forget about all of his problems.
Yeah.
And he got better. He did get better. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I really do. I think he was absolutely first class for us this year. Moving on to this man, Angelo Ogbonna. Start of the season, him and Zouma were an absolute rock unit.
Yeah.
Then he goes and gets injured against Liverpool, he's out.
He gets an incomplete for me. I can't give him a grade. Based on his performances, he was probably an 8.5 or a 9. But the poor guy got injured, and I have real fear that he's turning into a Winston Reed. At least he's not on a 6-year contract, but we did extend him. I really want him back. Really want him back next season, and I think he should be back next season. I think he was almost ready at the end of this season.
Yeah.
But I have a real fear that we may have seen the best of Ogbonna. It's a bad injury that he got, and he's 33, 34, isn't he? 34, I think, yeah. And it's hard to come back at that age, I have a real fear that they're seeing the best of him already. And if we have, it's a shame because, he's not old for a center back, but but that injury is going to be a difficult thing to come back from.
That's more to it, the injury, isn't it? Like Italian
defenders, it's all about the injury, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Italian defenders get better with age, don't they? Unless they seem to go forever.
I mean, they do. That's true. Generally, they do. Italian defenders do get better with age, and he's always been great for us. I can't remember him never being. I can't remember him ever being a problem. I just fear that's a big injury to come back from.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think if he comes back, I think certain conference games, I think he'd be ideal for.
Oh,
or
absolutely. Yeah.
League Cup games. But I think
Yeah.
the main boys have to be ahead of him, hands down. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, if we sign this Aguerd from Rennes, I mean, I would like to see him step in as a regular. Who's a left-sided center back, I think. I'd like to see
Yeah.
him step in as a regular. So I think you'd see Ogbonna probably move down to more of a squad role.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, he'd be good at that. So
Mm. Before I move on, please smash a like on the video. And also, I'm going to move on to midfielders now, so it's going to get interesting. I'm going to start off with this man, Thomas Souček. Everyone's, I've had different people on this channel. They've all given me different ratings. How do you assess him this year, Lee?
He opened the scoring against Sevilla, and I have to give him credit for that. I know it's just one goal, but that was a big goal in a big game. That's the only reason he gets. I give him. I'm going to say a 6.5. A 6.5. It just. He really struggled this season. Now, I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think there are two main reasons. One, we let Declan go forward more, and that was what Souček's role was previously. And now that Declan is going forward, Souček doesn't look as comfortable as he did before. But you know, the other thing is, again, I think along with Soufal, I think the rest of the league, the Premier League, kind of figured him out to some extent.
Yeah.
You get film on the guy. You know what I mean? You get film on him, and you know how to play them. And he just can't pass. He's great in the air. He's great for a headed goal from time to time. He cannot pass the ball more than 5 yards. He just can't do it. You just got to have somebody in that position who's, you know, more able to go to move play forward, right? When he goes forward on a set piece, or when he goes forward and scores with his head, that's great, but he didn't do as much of that this season. But he's not a facilitator. And you need somebody who's a facilitator. He's just not. He just doesn't do that.
Is it because he's like one-dimensional, Lee? Like people have just gone, this is what he can do. He's good in the air. You stop him from set pieces and everything. Then really, you nullify Souček completely, don't you?
You do. I mean, that's the thing. Is I think you know, again, I think he was a surprise package in the Premier League when he first came in. But you know, we've switched the roles that he and Declan played, and that hasn't helped him. And the other thing is, he just, you nullify him if you take away set pieces. He can't pass.
It's true.
And I tell you, there are games that I would watch and I would forget he was even on the pitch. You know, he was so invisible. So. Love his attitude, bleeds for the club quite literally on a regular basis. For some reason, the guy takes a lot of shots to the head. But, you know, a rough season, and this season, a little bit like Soufal, this is going to be his proving season.
Would you sell him, Lee?
I don't know how much we'd get for him. It all would depend on the price, you know, and would we replace him? I mean, that's the question. I mean, would I sell him? I mean, I would, but I wouldn't sell him. I mean, I don't know what would you get for a guy like that? Would you get 20 million? 15?
You'd be getting more than that. I think he'd be going up in the region of 35 at least. He's only 27.
You think so?
Yeah, 100%. I think he's got. I think for a certain team who play a certain system, then I think he's good. I just think with us, I think last season, before I move on, last season we sussed him out. That he was phenomenally in the air, good at set pieces.
Right.
I think this season, the Euros could possibly play a part. I think I'd know more next season if he's still here. Like, if he comes in next season, starts the season, and he's performing high quality, then we can look at it and go, maybe he was just knackered from playing the Euros and straight to a Prem.
That was the reason. The argument to me for not selling him, is that he needs rest. He played almost every match, and he just, as you said, they went fairly deep into the Euros. I think they went to the quarterfinal. Semifinal. He just needs rest. He and Soufal both, they need rest, and with rest, they'll be better players. They'll come back to the form they were in previously. So, I mean, I'm not itching to sell him so far as I want to get rid of him. We need depth. We don't need to be selling players. We need to bring players in without releasing too many others. So, Plus, I think he has a good attitude. I think that generally he's a player who helps in the changing room with the atmosphere. He's going to have a prove it. He's going to have to prove himself next season. Like Sufal, he's going to have to do it because again we're on the cusp of an Issa Diop situation where it's like he makes it or he doesn't make it. So
yeah. Totally
incredible to say after last season he was so amazing that who knew we would be talking about that?
I know, mate. I know. Yeah. Moving on to this man who we definitely want to stay forever is Declan Rice.
He's a 10 out of 10. Come on, he's a 10 out of 10, right? I mean, he is.
Yeah.
He is. The guy's world class. He's our best player. He's one of the best players to come through West Ham in the last, 50 years. I mean, listen, if Declan Rice, and I know he probably won't, I understand this, but if Declan Rice were to stay with us, he has the potential to be a Billy Bonds, Trevor Brooking, even Bobby Moore level legend. Like the guy could have a stand named after him. With all due respect to Mark Noble, if Declan Rice did 18 years with us, he'd have a stand named after. I know he won't. I get it. I understand that he won't. But he's a 10 out of 10. He's a fantastic player. Just and we really, if we ever lose him, it's going to take like 3 guys to replace him.
100%. 100%. I believe, Lee, that him being here gives us the best possibility of winning a trophy.
No question about it. And I think we better win one while he's still here.
Yeah, because I just don't, and I do agree with what you just said there about 3 players. I think it is about 3 players because he does everything.
Yeah, he does. He does everything. And you match after match, you see the holes he fills. You see that he defends when our defenders are lacking. That he comes in, he bails out Souček. How many times is there a Declan Rice pass that launches one of our counters? All the time. I mean, the guy's just absolutely brilliant. And I think the only thing he needs to work on is, and I know he's a defensive midfielder, but I think his finishing is a little lacking. And again, you don't expect a lot of goals from a guy in his position, but when he has the chance, he still likes a shot. He still puts a lot of them over the bar, so that's the only thing he needs. Other than that, he's obviously a world-class player. I think he walks into 95% of the clubs in Europe at this point.
Yeah, easily, mate.
Maybe 99%, maybe almost all of them. Yeah.
Moving on to this man, Nikola Vlasic. I come on your channel. We had many debates about Vlasic, and people kept saying to me, "Oh, he's going to come good." How do you assess his season, Lee? He was the most expensive player last season.
I don't think. I mean, listen, value for money, he's a 0.
Yeah,
he's nothing. He didn't give us anything, in my opinion. Now you can't entirely fault him for that, though. He never played. I don't know whether he's going to be a Fornals or whether he's going to be like a Carlos Sanchez. If you remember, and this is a little bit where we are, where some people are. I know we'll get to it in a minute. Where some people are with Benrahma. Fornals, a lot of people didn't like him when he first came to West Ham. To some extent, even Bowen got subbed off a lot.
Yeah.
So Vlasic, to me, I can't give him a score because I it's just not fair to him. For whatever reason, Moyes doesn't seem to trust him. He has not looked remarkable to me for a £35 million signing when I've seen him play. He's looked very pedestrian and very average. But again, you can't give a guy 10 minutes every 3 games and judge him. I
think he deserves to play though, Lee. That's the.
I don't know that he does. I'm not sure he does. Yeah. I think that's something that we would have to see on the training ground.
Yeah.
I mean, based on his game performances, no, he doesn't. But again, you can't. I mean, it's hard to take a player and have him have any confidence, or get into any sort of form when he never plays. He knows he's not going to play. I think at this point, he looks like a bust. He does look like a bust at this point because of the money we spent and because of the excitement about him. We brought him in. Everybody says this is a great transfer. Only Lucas and the Slavic guys still like him.
Yeah, I agree.
They're his last defenders. Does he deserve to play? No. I mean, based on what I've seen, no. But what do we see? What happens in training? We don't know.
Yeah.
listen, we spent a lot of money on him, and this is one of those things where you just have to trust Moyes, and if Moyes doesn't like him, well, it's his fault that he brought him in. But if Moyes doesn't like him, then we move on. I can't. I mean, there's just no way to give him a score though. He didn't do anything, you know.
I don't know, Lee. He did play a few. Did play a few games. He played in the Europa League Cup, in the Prem in the January when Ben Rama was gone for AFCON. So he has played games.
He was unremarkable when he played, right? Would you give him a higher score than a 4?
I think I'll give him a 3, mate.
I was going to say if you judge the actual minutes he spent on the pitch, he's a 3 or a 4. He's not good enough. He's one step above Masuaku.
Yeah, I think for me personally, before I move on, when I look at him, I see a player there that we brought in who should be.
Richard B says in the comments, I'd give Vlasic a 7 out of 40.
Sorry, that was funny. Do you know what I mean? But what it is, when I look at him, he's played games, but he hasn't done anything to go, wow, he needs to start next game.
No, nothing.
That makes sense. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a very, I think Moyes has been stung by CSKA Moscow on Vlasic, in my opinion. So no rating from Lee. Moving on to this man, who I hope he does give a rating to, and that's Manny Lanzini.
This is a tough one. A really tough one, because he had moments when he looked fantastic. He scored a brilliant goal against Palace. He scored a brilliant goal away against Manchester City, even though it was, didn't really impact the match. Nevertheless, a great goal, and every goal counts when it comes down to goal differential and that sort of goal difference and that sort of thing. I always say differential, goal difference. I mean, I give him a 6.5. I don't think he's quite a 7 for me. I didn't think he was all that good, but I thought he had moments when he impacted games. He's just such a lightweight at the 10 position. He's just not big enough, powerful enough to take on some of these Premier League defenders. I think the guy would be fantastic in, I don't know, Spain maybe. Do you know what I mean? Or not fantastic, but better.
I think he's coming to the end of his career, and I think
I do too.
He's a sort of player, Lee, that you bring on last 20 minutes to control the game. I don't think you can start him. Him and Fornells just don't work, in my opinion.
He and Fornells don't work, and I would definitely keep Fornells. If you had to get rid of one of the two, I'd absolutely keep Fornells. Lanzini, that injury really affected his career very severely. And I feel as though it affected his confidence as much as anything else. Physically, he may have recovered. I'm not sure mentally he ever did. He is capable of moments of brilliance. You remember the Tottenham goal, obviously, last season when we drew right at the end. You remember the Palace goal, the Man City. He is capable of moments of brilliance, but he was best with Dimitri Payet in the team. Between that and the injury, he's never been the same since. And he's not good enough to be our number 10 going forward if we want to be European contender season after season and compete for European trophies. I don't think he's good enough.
Yeah.
Again, I think he's a mid-table player to me these days.
Is he here next year, Lee, before we move on?
Oh, I think he is. Yeah. I mean, listen, Moyes likes the players he has confidence in. I think he has confidence in Lanzini. And I think, as you said, you bring him in as a substitute, bring him in the last 20 minutes, he's pretty effective doing that sort of thing.
I think it's ideal for him, last 20 minutes.
I do too. I think he's a bench player. He's a squad player. If he'll accept that role, then he should accept that role because that's what he is. So.
Yeah. Totally agree with you, mate. Moving on to this man, final season at West Ham after a very, very long years with West Ham.
I give Mark Noble, now, relative to how much he played, he didn't play much. I thought he had a good season in his final season. I thought he was like an 8, no joke. When he came on the pitch. He was fantastic. Now we know he's finished now, but we know he didn't have 90 minutes in him. Excuse me. And we know he was basically somebody who was going to come on 15, 20 minutes at the end of a match, especially if we were ahead. If we were leading, he was going to come on to try to control the match. I thought in that role he was fantastic.
So did I, mate.
I thought he had one of the best seasons he's had in years. I give him.
I thought he could go another season. He looked like
I thought the same thing. I give him an 8, and he might have even been an 8.5. I thought when he came on, he was fantastic. I know Trudge, he did miss the penalty. I know he did. I know he did. But you know what? That game was a disaster anyway after Lingard scored against us.
It was
the most predictable thing that could happen. I thought Noble was great. He looked like his old self. But then, when he's playing 20 minutes instead of 90, that's probably part of the reason why.
Yeah. How will you remember?
He play another season.
How will you remember Mark Noble, Lee, from your time supporting West Ham?
Well, listen, I have a lot of. We could do a whole show on Mark Noble. I will always appreciate his the way he carried himself as a player and as a person. I think he's a fantastic representative for the club, for East London, for Canning Town, I think is where he's from.
Yeah.
Things like the way he swept up the changing rooms, I think that's brilliant. I think he's somebody who will always be a great, presence around West Ham if he stays, and I think he's somebody who represents the club with a lot of dignity. Kind of a mediocre player.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, I'm sorry. People talk about 18 years of loyalty. I don't know how many clubs were actually after him in those 18 years. Like, I don't feel as though, you know what I mean? Like, was he just constantly, talked about as a transfer target? I don't remember that.
No.
So,
but he's always been that sort of steady player, reliable player. So
reliable and steady. I agree. A little crazy in his tackles sometimes. Sometimes Mark Noble tackles can be a little out of control. 100%. He's a guy who I think would have been a great player in the 70s. I think he was a tough player, a little bit reckless, and I think if you'd have put him up against those dirty Leeds teams of the 70s, I think he'd have done really well. I think in the modern era of the Premier League, where there's less physicality, he kind of struggled sometimes, but was capable of a brilliant assist from time to time, was an excellent penalty taker, no doubt about that. I've got to tell you in all honesty, mixed record as a captain for me. Okay. Good representative for the club, but on the pitch, too many times when we conceded, I saw the shoulders just slump for the whole team. And I don't feel as though he ever totally got a handle on that. And I know he always tried to keep everybody up and spirited, but Declan Rice to me has a presence that Noble never had as captain.
I 100% agree with you on that, mate. I really do.
I kind of think, and I'm a big Scott Parker fan, but I think Scott Parker was a better captain. Noble, with a much worse team, by the way. Noble, to me, as captain, was never the inspirational leader he needed to be. He was more as you said, he's a reliable guy, reliable player, brought dignity to the club, brought a good presence, good personality to the club. Did not lead the way I thought he should have led as a captain. So it'll always be a mixed bag for me. The fact that he's a local guy, that he's a Canning Town guy, that'll always make the biggest difference. Is that he got to play? It'd be like one of my boys playing for the New England Patriots or something, even though they don't care about football. But the point is, he got to play for his boyhood club. That's brilliant, fantastic. Mixed bag, other than that, quite frankly. Sorry, that's how I feel.
That's fair enough, mate. That's fair enough. But I'll be honest. I think when I look at Mark, before I move on, I think for what he did bring to West Ham, where he's a fan of the club, he can relate to all the fans. That makes sense.
Yes, absolutely, totally. Yes,
because he's involved in it and he's a fan. But first of all, he was never a player first. He was a fan, like a supporter first, a player second at West Ham. And
that's
for me, I remember obviously in 2016 when the last game at the Bowling and and all that. I think he feels it as a fan. I think now he can sit back and be a fan and not have to carry the team. Or you know what I mean? So I do agree with partly what you're saying, though, Lee, in certain things. 100%.
I mean, genuinely, I believe a great human being who is a great representative for our club. And there are so many players out there who don't represent their clubs well off the pitch. And to me, the fact that he's a gentleman, has always been a gentleman, that's his greatest trait. If you look at Mark Noble as a player, not a remarkable player, a good, solid player. Good solid player.
No.
But a guy, if he hadn't spent 18 years, if he'd spent 3 seasons at West Ham or 5, I think we'd kind of look at him and say, "Oh, do you remember that guy? Yeah, I remember that guy." You know.
Yeah.
But it
I
wouldn't be
agree.
like, "Oh, he was," you know what I mean? It wouldn't be like, "Oh, he was one of the greats." It'd be like, "He was good. He was good for a while." Valon Barami, you know what I mean? Or somebody like that. Yeah. So
totally agree with you, mate. Moving on to the attackers now. And we'll start off with this man, Pablo Fornals. What's your assessment on him this season, mate?
I think he struggled a lot in the second half of the season. I think he didn't have his best showing against Frankfurt. I keep coming back to that first game. I think he was probably largely at fault for the first goal in the first minute, although frankly the fact that we conceded that is still that bothers me more than anything else that happened this season. I give him a 7.5. I don't quite give him an 8. I think 8 is a little too high, but I think he was a 9 or 9.5 for about half the season, and I think he struggled toward the end. Again, I think he got tired. They all got tired, you know. He started making mistakes. And the other thing about Fornals is he's in a difficult situation because we're asking him, when he plays on the left, we're asking him to almost be a second left back with Cresswell back there. Do you know what I mean? He tracks back a lot, more than most of our attacking players. He will track back. He will defend.
Do you think we'll get the best of him if we get a better left back?
Oh, absolutely. I think a better left back solves a lot of problems. I also, you know, Fornals. One of the problems we have, I think, is that you have Fornals and Benrahma. They're both capable, to me, of playing in the center. They're playing in the 10 role. You can't put them both there, you know. I think he's fundamentally a very good player who had to kind of do double duty and got a little weary in the second half of the season, and his performances fell off a little bit. But he's absolutely somebody you continue to build the team around, because I do think that if we strengthen in other positions, he'll get better. He needs, again, a little like Declan. His finishing needs to be better. Needs to score more goals. Needs to be more active.
That's the only thing with me that I think, if I remember rightly, I'll give him an 8. And I said that he was very good at the start. Since his missus had a kid, he sort of went like slightly down. But do you know what? I'd like to see him score some more goals, but I think for what he does do, he does all right. Do you know what I mean? He does pretty good. So
I do too. I do too. I mean, to me, he's between a 7.5 and an 8. He's one of our better players. He's not quite at the Declan Rice, Kurt Zuma level, but he's one notch below. Absolutely a guy who can take you into Europe. Absolutely a guy who can perform in Europe. I don't think he's a weakness. Let's put it that way. No. I just think, like everybody else, he got tired, and I'd love to see him at the 10. Give him a shot. It's a hard thing to do though because of the way we set up.
100% agree, mate. Moving on to this man, Saheed Benrahma. Mixed bag for him this year.
I'd give him a 7. I don't think he was that bad, and that 7 is So I think he, to me, a better season than Souček, a better season than Coufal, a better season than most of our players in a lot of ways. We had a great season. It feels as though a lot of our guys kind of dropped off. People forget how good Benrahma was in the group stages in Europe, where I thought he was mostly excellent. What did he score? 8 or 9 goals this season, something like that.
17 goals and assists combined.
Right. So that's for a West Ham player. That's really good. We don't have guys who put up massive numbers. That's not how we work.
Do you think he's been quite scapegoated this year, though, Lee?
Oh, absolutely, he's been scapegoated. Oh, I think he had, and I know you're a big fan, and but I think he's absolutely been scapegoated. They got to jump on somebody. It was Fornals in the past. Now it's Benrahma. I don't know why we have this tendency as fans, West Ham fans. We have to sort of demonize I don't think we're alone in doing this. I think a lot of fans do this, but we have to demonize our players when things aren't going well. And Benrahma, I see people say things about Benrahma that are just outrageous. I mean, I think he's a solid player with a good future. I absolutely would not get rid of him. And people talk about selling him. I don't think that makes any sense. I mean, again, it's hard because he doesn't. He and Fornals are similar, and really, it's very effective to me when you start one and bring the other one on later in the match. But it's hard to do that because they're both They're both good players.
But if you was the manager of West Ham, Lee, and you had a subs bench and you had Ben Rama or Fornells on there, and you need one of them to change the game for you, which one would you bring on?
It's probably Fornells, to be honest.
Mm.
But I mean, Ben Rama is listen. When he's on, he's very, very good. When he's on, he's a 9 out of 10 player. The problem is when he's off, he's a 5 out of 10 player. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a lack of consistency with him, to me.
Confidence are key with him, though.
Confidence, and and again, we know I think he was the most subbed player in the squad this season.
He was, mate,
statistically he was, and you saw his frustration. You saw him come off the pitch angry about it. He didn't like it. He was angry about it.
Yeah,
you know, he wants to play. He's a footballer. So it's hard. It's hard to know how to use him. I don't think we're using him well. The question is he capable of being a guy who steps in for 50 plus games a year, which is what we're hopefully going to be playing, you know, with cups and everything else. And can he consistently perform at a high level? I don't know that he's shown that he can. He's shown that he can do it sometimes, but then other times he looks like a passenger to me. So, but I would not sell him. I would absolutely keep him. And I think he's somebody who, you know, will continue to contribute to us. And, you know, I'll say the thing I said about him and about Declan and Fornals is he could be a little bit better finisher. All of our attackers could, in my opinion.
100% agree. There,
I mean, we don't have a what am I trying to say? Like not just a striker, but a pure goal scorer. We don't have a pure goal scorer.
No, that's one thing we don't have. But this man was a goal scorer. He scored last night for Ukraine, and now he has left the club. Give me your assessment of his time at West Ham, Lee, for Andrei Yarmolenko.
His whole time at West Ham, he got paid too much to do too little. But let me say this about Yarmolenko. The goals he scored were gigantic goals. Against Chelsea, basically to keep us up in the second game after the restart.
Yeah.
One of the biggest goals in the history of West Ham United, in my opinion. The Sevilla goal, which, you know, showed that we were contenders in Europe, right? It pushed us 2 more rounds, basically. That was a fantastic goal at just the right time. And, you know, if we go out in the round of 16 in that European competition, who knows? Maybe we don't recruit the same players we're going to recruit this summer. We'll see. I think the fact that we got to a semifinal showed that we weren't pretenders, right? And he was a big part of that. That goal against Villa, I mean, the guy has to go get his family out of Ukraine because his country's under siege. He comes back. He scores this gigantic goal against a tough, you know, Villa are always a little overrated, but a tough opponent at home. Brilliant goals. All those goals were brilliant goals. The problem is, you know, you talk about players who, a guy like Tufal, who doesn't come through in the clutch, right? Doesn't come through when we need him. Yarmolenko only comes through in those big moments, and the rest of the time he's kind of useless. I mean, as a bench player, I give him a 7 because I don't think he was that bad. As a guy who was on 120K a week, I give him a 4 because he just doesn't live up to the money. Do you know what I mean? If he's a 50K per week player, all right.
He's worth.
He comes on.
He's worth it. Yeah.
If he's a 50K per week player, the guy's a 7 or an 8 for the season. At 120, as our highest paid player, I believe. I mean, a 3, a 4, just not good enough. You know.
Yeah.
And he does. He's a country over club guy for whatever reason, and you know. But I'll always have good memories of those big goals he scored. You know, always have good. And I listen. I wish him the best with Ukraine. Obviously, you know.
Yeah.
Hope they qualify at this point. So.
Yeah. So do I. Listen, I think he started off well, got his injury. Then he was literally ridiculed by the fan base, which is rightfully so for the amount of money. And I agree with what you just said there about he's on 50. If he's on 50K a week, I think West Ham fans.
We keep him. If he's on 50K a week, he still plays for us, you know.
And then this season, I think he sort of left us something behind. Like he left us a few memories, like the Seville goal.
He did.
You know what I mean? Will always stay with us. I think Seville at home that night was amazing. It was amazing for the whole.
It's one of my favorite West Ham games of all time already.
Yeah.
it may be everybody talks about the 3-0 versus Lyon, and that was a fantastic game. But Sevilla to me were a better team than Lyon.
Yeah.
And I think that home, after we lost in the first knockout leg of a European competition we've been in for decades, coming home, winning with that goal the way he did right at the end, or an extra time, I should say.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a brilliant moment. It was a great moment for the club. It was one of the favorite moments of all time. So Yarmolenko will always have I'll always have happy memories of him, even though the evaluation of his whole performance has to be a little harsh.
Yeah, totally agree, mate. Moving on to this man who's been absolutely first class this year, Jarrod Bowen.
I think he's a 10 out of 10. I think he's a 10 out of 10. I'm not sure he could have done much better. Nobody's perfect, but I got to say, this guy I mean, listen, he just goes from he came in, when he came to us, he immediately made an impact, and he's actually gotten better. You have guys like Souček, Coufal, Diop came in, made an impact, and then they've struggled. Bowen just goes from strength to strength. He gets better all the time. To me, he's becoming world class. I think we have three players who are genuinely world class, and that's Bowen, Rice, and Kurt Zouma at this point. And I think, and that's a lot for West Ham. That's we're not used to that. I think he's brilliant. I think he's even better. Can do just about anything. I mean, he seems to have locked down Danny Dyer. So he's had a real good last few months.
I think when you look at Bowen, because I remember coming on American Hammers, and I used to speak to all the boys on American Hammers, and me and Affers used to always say he makes the chances, but he just don't convert. And now he's scoring them. Yeah,
he's the best finisher we have at the club.
100%. Yeah,
he's the best goal scorer and the best finisher. He's a guy, he can play if you need him to be a makeshift striker, he can do that. He's obviously deadly from the wing. He's fantastic in our counterattacking system. I hope we can hang on to this guy for a long, long time. I love his story. I love the fact that he was a non-league player, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. Then he came up with Hull, and it's another great story of, not a guy who was plucked when he was 8 years old to some guy in academy. He had to kind of work his way up through the ranks, and he gets better and better all the time. It's just, I think without him, we're nowhere near the top 7. I think without him, we're nowhere near a European semifinal. He's absolutely essential to us. Another 100%. Guy, it takes 2 or 3 players to replace him if we lose him.
100% agree, mate. Moving on to this man, the final rating for the players, and that is Michail Antonio.
Oh, I love him, James. I love his effort. I love his attitude. I love his sense of humor. I'm going to be generous and give him a 7, okay? Because I do think he does things, even when he doesn't score, that are positive for us. He wears out defenders. He's physical. He's relatively quick. He just got to score more goals. He's our only striker. He's just got to score. What do you have, 2 after January? Something like that?
I think he scored 3 goals after January.
In all competitions, right? I mean, that's not good enough. It's just not. So he's a guy who, here's where I look at Antonio. Prior to January, he's like a 9. I thought he was brilliant.
Yeah.
After January, he's like a 5. You know what I mean? That's why I put the overall rating somewhere in the middle, and it may seem generous because we saw in the last 6 months, 5 months, not look very good. The first few months of the season, I thought he was very good. I thought he was excellent. So a middling season overall. I just, he cannot continue to be our only option at striker. He just can't. It's just not. I know he's not even a real striker, but he is now. He wears the 9. He plays the role. I mean, he is.
He's a striker now, though, isn't he? Like, people keep saying he's not a striker, but he's been in that role 3 years now. He come up 3 years.
He is. Yeah. He may not be. It may not be his background, but he is now. And Moises converted him. And again, he stayed healthy. I wish he hadn't gone to Jamaica. That was a gigantic mistake. I know he wanted to, play in a World Cup. They were never going to qualify. They were never close. Frankly, they never were. I mean, I follow CONCACAF, right? I live in the U.S. I follow CONCACAF. They were never close to qualifying. Didn't have the squad. it's just a massive error for him to do that. I think if he doesn't do that, he probably scores more than 3 goals in the last 5 months of the season. Huge error. we know he's fragile. He stayed healthy most of the season, which was good, but the guy's a hamstring pop away from the end of his career.
Yeah.
I'm a little biased toward him because I just love his attitude. I love his presence on social media. I love what a lot of things he does for the club. Um, you know, off the
Mm.
pitch, he's just got to score more goals. That's all there is
Yeah.
to it. He's just got to score more goals.
Is it? It's a striker. If a striker comes in, is Antonio first choice for you next year, Lee?
That depends on who it is. I mean,
Mm.
Antonio is after a whole summer off, he might be. Yeah, after
Mm.
he's rested, maybe. It just depends. I mean, if we sign a striker, it depends. Are we signing a guy who's meant to come in and challenge him? Are we signing a player who's supposed to be, a bench player for a couple of seasons until he works? It just depends on who it is.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he's first choice in August because I think he'll come out in form and be rested. The question is he first choice in December or January? I don't know.
Yeah. I
We'll have to
totally
see.
agree.
Because by the middle of the season, I was ready for anybody else to step in and play. Even though I love him as a player, he was knackered, and he's never been clinical. Right? I mean, that's a
100%
really
agree on
polite way.
that.
That's a really polite way of saying he's a garbage finisher.
Yeah, he just scrambles the balls in. But yeah,
yeah.
we will see. Final rating, and it's this man. It's the David Moyes. Give me your assessment on him.
Listen. I'm gonna go against the grain here. Okay, I'm gonna give him. I'm gonna give him an 8.5. 8.5, not a 9. There's two reasons. Two things. One, I still give him less of the blame for January than I give the board. I know a lot of people don't feel that way. That's how I feel.
Mm.
Here's the bottom line on Moyes. All right, and I actually went through it and I looked all this up because I was curious and I wrote it down somewhere. Now I don't know where it is. West Ham, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time we've ever finished in the top 7 of the top flight 2 consecutive seasons. It's never happened before, ever in 126 years.
Mm.
We've only been to something like 4 or 5 European semifinals in our history. There was the 65, obviously, there was 76. I believe it or not, I think they were in the semifinal in 66 as well, the Cup Winners' Cup. Then there was Intertoto, if you want to count that back in 2000. It's kind of more of a qualifying tournament, but
yeah.
So you have a situation where this is like our fifth European semifinal ever. The first time we've ever had 2 top 7 finishes in the top flight consecutively. I think he's been absolutely brilliant working under the constraints of some of the worst owners in the Premier League. And I'm going to tell you this. Think January aside, we were 45 minutes away from finishing top 6 again.
Mm.
And I know there are a lot of again, it's a whole 38 matches of results have to factor into this. We should never have lost to Leeds. We should never have lost twice to Brentford. Should never have lost twice to Manchester United. That's not they weren't a good team this season. That's really the reason we didn't get. So there were and obviously we didn't strengthen in January. He has to take responsibility for all of those things. On the other hand, we had a 1-0 lead away to Brighton, and we were 45 minutes away from finishing top 6. He had us there. And the players let him down. They let him down in that second half. They let him down, and he said it too, and he was right. I think you have to give Moyes an enormous amount of credit for what he did this season. I think you have to give him an enormous amount of credit for what he's done with this club. When you look at Bilic, Pellegrini, Allardyce, certainly Evan Grant, Zola, all the managers we've had in the GSB era, he is so far and away above the rest of them that I think you have to take all that into consideration, right? He's not managing Newcastle or Chelsea or, he's not managing a club with competent ownership or wealthy owners.
Yeah.
I give him an 8.5. If we had strengthened in January, he could have had a 9 or 9.5 in my opinion. But the fact that he did seem to dither about picking players, that's a problem for me. I think that hurt us. I do. But we were 45 minutes away from being in Europa League again. And even, Conference League is, by West Ham standards, you go back 2 seasons, we were lucky to stay up. Or not lucky, but we were fortunate to stay up. I'm a huge fan of Moyes. I think I know not many people want Moyes out, but I will say this. I think most people who were harsh on David Moyes don't understand that he'd be almost impossible to replace. Look at the track record that these owners have with managers. It's terrible. It's so bad.
I totally agree.
This is the first guy we've come in. Not only did he keep us up, he gave us 2 consecutive good seasons, which has almost never happened in the history of West Ham. I'm a big fan of David Moyes. I'll defend him to the hilt, but he does need to be more decisive about signing players. He does need to make better substitutions, and he does need a plan B. Yeah. I mean, you could predict our starting 11 for almost the entire season, everybody barring injuries. He needs a plan B, and the lack of a plan B is a big problem to me, and that's what worries me the most going into this next season.
I think not just the 11, Lee. I think you could even predict the substitutes and all.
Oh, of course you could. You could predict the whole bench. Yeah. And you could predict who would come in and win. We're too predictable. The 4-2-3-1 is starting to show a little bit of weakness.
Bit stale, I think.
It's getting a bit stale, and I thought in the second half of the season you saw a combination of fatigue and predictability, and that formation just not getting the results it used to get. And you saw us have a bad run of form, and I do put a lot of that responsibility on him. I do. All I've said, what it came down to for me though was 45 minutes away from another top 6 finish, which would have been thrilling. We'd have all been happy with that, I think.
Yeah.
And I felt as though our players just let him down, a little bit. Now he let them down in other parts of the season, but I in the time I've been following West Ham, he's far and away the best manager we've had. He's at least the best since Harry Redknapp. He might be the best since John Lyle. And I think if you tried to replace him, you'd find that it'd be extremely difficult to do.
It most certainly would be, mate. I must admit, and that is all the player ratings for the season 2022. No, 2021, 2022. Lee, I've got a few questions before we wrap up, mate. First of all,
of course.
What's the hardest defeat that you've witnessed this year?
Frankfurt away.
Yeah. I think I've asked everyone that, and they've all said the same thing. I think it was just painful, wasn't it?
Because I believed. That's why. Actually, you know what? I'm going to change it. It was Frankfurt at home. That was the hardest defeat. The away leg felt a little bit inevitable, especially after Crest. But Frankfurt at home, you know what? The whole Frankfurt thing, that was the best part. Yeah.
Best victory this season.
For me, it's always going to be Sevilla at home. I know Lyon was fantastic, but that Sevilla team, they own the Europa League. And the fact that we came back, it was everything about it. It was the atmosphere, it was the circumstances. It's Sevilla at home for me. It's the best I've ever seen West Ham play, ever.
Yeah. And how do you want West Ham to move forward? That's the final question from me.
I think we have to have a huge summer of signings. I think the hard thing is we need to bring players in without shipping a lot of players out or selling a lot of players because we need depth. And that's not a very David Sullivan thing to do. He likes to sell and then buy, if he ever buys.
Yeah.
At a minimum, left back, striker, probably another defensive midfielder. I mean, that's a bare minimum, and we probably could use, really help all over. Another center back too, which we may be getting ready to sign. Bare minimum of 4 players who can step into the starting 11, right?
Yeah.
Who could not just guys who you're going to bring along or academy guys or whatever. Maybe an Ashby can step in. That'd be fantastic if he could. Bare minimum 4 and probably more like 5 or 6. I know that sounds like a lot, but if we have a squad depth and if our players stay healthy and if we get the most out of them, Conference League versus Europa League, I think we could genuinely be a top 4 contender. I really do.
Yeah.
Because Conference League should not be as difficult as Europa League, in theory anyway.
Yeah.
We should be able to play more of the kids, in theory.
It shouldn't be, but no, West Ham.
But with West Ham, it's always difficult. I know I was going to say it doesn't really matter. It's always difficult. Yeah, it's always difficult.
100% agree with that.
Stick with Moyes. Bare minimum 4 signings ready to step in immediately. And I think I think we could have, again, with injuries and everything else cooperating, I think we could have another at least top 6 season. if we're listen, I'll be thrilled if we're consistently in and around the top 6. All right, especially with Newcastle having the money that they have now. If we're in and around the top 6 on a consistent basis, I'll be thrilled. Absolutely thrilled. I think that's a great goal for us. I think the occasional top 4 would be absolutely brilliant. Would take a massive effort, but if we're around those European places season after season, fantastic.
Yeah, totally agree with you, mate. I really, really do. That has been Lee from American Hammers Network. Go and check him out and all the boys over there. I must admit, I've got a lot of time for Lee and the gang over there. They give me an opportunity to go on their channel. And
we got time for you. We got time for you. Listen, I didn't do a show last night. Last night was a little bit rough here around the house, but we're going to do another one soon. And James, we're doing last show we did was bench, sell, or start. All right. So that was the idea. And we only got through the keepers and the defenders. So we got the midfielders and the attackers coming up. So I want you to be on when we talk about Benrahma. All right. You got to be there for my man. You got to be there for my man. So maybe I'll let you know what it is. But we'll get you back on. Yeah.
But listen, go over and check him out over there on American Hammers Network and all the lads. Lucas is another one who was who I met from there, and I met him in person, and he's absolutely top class. Lee, I want to thank you for coming on today, mate. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, anytime. Happy to do it. Very happy.
Yeah. Good man. Good man. Anyway, I'm going to let everyone enjoy their Thursday. It's Jubilee over here. Everyone's dancing in the streets of the UK and go and enjoy yourselves. And I'll be back again soon to another video. I'll probably do a video in regard of a guard. Watched him last night. Thoroughly impressed with what I saw. And West Ham need to get it done. But we will see. Anyway, take care and goodbye.